Hi, welcome everyone. We're just going to give people a few minutes to come in. Thanks for coming. Okay, thanks everyone for coming. My name is Kim Madden. I'm from Advocates for Children. Joining me today is Ross. Ross, do you want to?
Yeah, hi, I'm Ross Baker. I'm also with Advocates for Children. Sorry, I can change my Zoom name.
And we're going to get started in just a few minutes. We'll give time for people to come in. If you take our survey at the very end, we'll be sure to send you a copy of the PowerPoint and the slides. It also will be posted on our YouTube. I think one of the most common questions we get is, will you share these slides? Also, as you have questions, you can enter them in the Q&A, and hopefully we'll answer a lot of them as we go through the slides. So just as we're waiting for people to come in, we have some questions about who's joining us today. So if you could take these polls about who you are, that would be wonderful.
One thing to add too is that since we are going to be posting a recording on YouTube, this is being recorded, and we can hang around for a little bit at the end after the recording if folks have like questions that they don't want in the recorded portion of the Q&A.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like Manhattan and Brooklyn are neck to neck, and parents and professionals are also evenly split. Thanks for coming. I'm going to end the poll now, and we'll get started. So Advocates for Children is an independent agency. We protect the rights of all New York City students. We have a few different services. We have a helpline that's open Monday to Thursday, 10 to 4. And we have people live answering calls in English and Spanish and through a language line in other languages. We have a lot of guides and resources that are available on our website. We do a lot of workshops and trainings. And we also offer free legal services to income eligible families. We also have updates on our website, as I know is probably on the top of a lot of your minds, what's going on with the bus strike, what's coming up this school year. We will put things up as soon as we have information. And we also have just information in general on our website. We also have a lot of workshops that we've done in the past that are recorded. So for example, this spring we did one on how to read an IEP that went page by page in what's in an IEP, or we've done one on Access VR. So we have lots and lots of different recorded workshops on our YouTube site. So feel free to check there for anything. Today, just to let you know what we're going to be doing is we're going to go through some new updates on back to school. We're going to talk about the online account where parents can find out information about their students. And of course, the big issue of the day, transportation. We're going to talk about placement issues, IEP issues for students with disabilities, language access issues, and suspensions. And we'll be taking questions throughout, but feel free to put them in the Q&A as well. Okay, so the biggest update, what happens if there's a bus strike? We still don't know whether or not there will be a bus strike, although I do think the fact that New York City is now putting out more information on what they're going to be providing means it's more likely than it was when they weren't saying that. I hope it doesn't happen. I remember the last bus strike really well. It was very chaotic time. For families, it was chaotic at Advocates for Children as well. You can reach out to us during that time if you have issues, and we will try to resolve them. What we know so far, and they have put this out publicly, is that parents, if there is a bus strike and your child is affected, if you're able to take public transport, so subways or buses to get to school, they're going to give parents Metro cards. And they are giving four trips, and they are saying that up front, which is great. In the past, sometimes they haven't been upfront about that. So that means you could get your child to school, you could use that Metro card to get to work, and then you could use a Metro card to get back to your child's school and to get home. Obviously, that's still a huge hardship on families because they have to transport their children themselves. And also for some families, it does not work for them. Like they can't take public transport. So in that case, the DOE said that they will be setting up prepaid rideshare programs for some families. That's the part that I think it's not entirely clear to me who will definitely get prepaid rideshare, who won't. And there have been some issues with that. They have said, though, like the Metro cards, it will be for up to 4 trips a day. And also for families that are able to pay and be reimbursed, they will reimburse as well, up to $100 a trip or $200 a day, which is obviously not 4 trips, but hopefully most people aren't paying that much to get to school. We don't have details yet in terms of, well, how do I put in for reimbursement? How do I know if I'm going to get prepaid rideshare? How do I know if my student's bus route is affected? And the only thing we would urge you to do is to make backup plans if you can. I know that's easy to say and really hard to do, but we'll put out the information as we get it. Okay, so in terms of one thing that I think is important to do, if you don't have a New York City student account, that used to be called My Student, and then they changed it this year. So if you're saying, wait, I know this, but it looks different, it's because last year it said mystudent.nyc. Now it's schools account. .nyc. This is a different website from My Schools, which is how you would apply to kindergarten or middle or high school. So it's not the same website, but it's also a parent-facing website. If you don't have an account, you should definitely reach out to your school. You can get information on here about transportation, for example. To follow an account, to create an account, you follow the directions on the DOE's website, but you can't do it unless you have a creation code from your child's school, or they may have sent a letter home with one. So you can reset the password on there if you had an account but lost it, but it is important to be in contact with the school to set that up. And the different kinds of things you can see on there are information about an IEP. If your child has one, you don't see the whole IEP, unfortunately, but you can see sections of it. Transportation, it will tell you what bus route your child has, and that's obviously really important. Enrollment, if you're looking to try to figure out like what year was my child at this school, or information about a school in general, you can look there. For older children, the promotion tracker and the graduation tracker is really helpful, and promotion tracker is helpful as well. You can see on attendance how many days they said your child missed. You can see the schedule. A lot of schools are changing their schedule this year. Hopefully they communicated that with you already, but if not, you could see it here. Transportation, even without a bus strike, transportation tends to be very stress-inducing for families. This is what the page looks like on NICSA, or that school's account website for transportation. This is for a student with an IEP with different accommodations. So you can see that this is a student who needs a wheelchair accessible bus, and they need limited time travel with 2 seats. So they have a nurse or a para with them. They need air conditioning. And if your child has accommodations that or you think they need accommodations like limited time travel, first of all, make sure they're on your student's IEP. If they're on the IEP and you don't see them here, you want to be reaching out and making sure that they're in place. Sometimes there's something different between what's on the IEP, what's in here, and what OPT knows. There shouldn't be a difference. But if you see anything that looks wrong, you should reach out right away. Also, you'd see like, so for here, for example, for this student, the bus company was Hoyt Transportation, and this is their number. You can see the route number, the pickup location, and the drop-off location. Frustratingly, what you can't see here that you used to be able to see when the DOE used to send out notices home is you can't see the pickup time. So to find that out, which obviously as a parent trying to get your child downstairs, that's really important. You're going to have to call the bus company. They should call you, but if you don't hear from them, reach out. And that's something that you can, try to make sure it's going to work for you ahead of time. So, as I was just saying, one of the most important things is to find out your bus number and a route number and the bus company. They are supposed to reach out to you, but if they don't, make sure you're reaching out ahead of time. And I would say, really by the end of this week, you should have heard from someone. Assuming the bus strike isn't happening. Check accommodations. Does it match your IEP? Does the IEP show what your child needs? And does the bus company know about it? If there's problems, you can call your school. The tricky thing, but that's what the DOE is telling parents to do, is call the school. The hard part is, as you probably know, at this time of year, there's not a lot of people in the school building right now, so it can be hard to reach someone. But try the school first. If you can't get through there, you are able to call OPT. The line will tell you they can't give you route information and they can't talk to you about specifics, and call your school. But if you wait on hold, and you may be on hold for a while, you will eventually reach someone, and they can, they may be able to help you. If it's a complaint, like next week, no bus comes, you should call, file a complaint, get a complaint number, write it down, have a log. Every year my son took buses, I had a whole notebook with like dates and complaint numbers and routes and what happened. Write it down. You think you'll remember it, but you won't, especially if it happens over and over and over again. And I hope that doesn't happen, but it's not uncommon that it does. And the reason you want to keep track of it all is eventually, when you have a certain number of complaint numbers, you can really push and say, I've complained 6 times and nothing's changing. I want to go up to, your supervisor, or to the router for this borough, or to somebody to try to figure out a solution. And that's, at some point they should respond. And it's helpful to be able to show that you have a documented history of all the times you've let them know about this issue. We have a transportation fact sheet that's on our website. These links are going to be sent to you afterwards. So the underlined sections on here are hyperlinks that you can click on and get to them. OPT, the Office of Pupil Transportation, also does have parent-facing information. And as I said in the beginning, please reach out for updates on the strike in general, and for updates on anything to do with the start of the school year. Okay, I don't know if there's any questions that oh, somebody asked about, parents who attend non-public schools should be able to get a New York City DOE parent account, or a school's account. But I have heard of issues with that at times. I would reach out to the CSC, and you can just call up the chain. You can even dial 311 and ask to speak with technology at the DOE. We've had people get pretty creative in who they're reaching out to. So yes, there should be a account set up for you there as well. But I have heard of parents having issues with it. Also, I apologize, throughout this, they did also, on top of changing my students to NICSA, they changed the DOE to New York City Public Schools. My brain is just, I can't only handle too many changes at once. And I'm going to find myself saying DOE, even though I think their official name is now New York City Public Schools. But anyway, somebody has a great way to say that, let me know, but it's a mouthful. Okay. If there's no other questions, Ross, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. And also, yeah, if you have questions throughout, just feel free to ask them. It's not like because we're done with the topic, you can't ask questions, but I'm gonna shift gears a little bit and talk about placement. So what if you have no placement? School's about to start. So to enroll in school, if your student is in grades K through 8 and you have his own school, that's where you should go. If not, you can access the Family Welcome Center. They should be open from 8 to 5 Mondays through Thursdays, and then 8 to 3 Mondays through Fridays. On Fridays, but they typically should help with placement. For high schools, you should go to your Family Welcome Center um, and try to reach out to them and try to coordinate how to get your student enrolled. There's locations online through the hyperlink, which will be sent with the presentation. And also we can send, on that same page, there's a link that can kind of like set an appointment or set a time that you're looking to go in. But if you have any questions, just go into the Family Welcome Center or contact them. It's what they're here for, and they should be prepared this time of year. So if you have no placement for preschool, you should contact the Office of Student Enrollment at this number here, or you can email this email hyperlinked here. To find a list of programs, you can go to myschools.nyc to see available programs for preschool. For special education services in preschool, you can contact the Committee on Preschool Special Education, which will arrange for related service or special class if that's what's indicated on your student's IEP. If your child has if your child has a recommendation for a special class or in an integrated setting, contact the CPSC for the district where you live. But that information should be on that CPSC hyperlink that we have in the presentation. All right, sorry about that. So if there's no placement for D1 through D32, again, you can go to the Family Welcome Center, and there you'll have there will be placements for zone schools or community schools, along with specialized programs, which I think Kim's going to talk about a little bit later that are included between D1, D32. But you can get on a wait list through the Family Welcome Center, even if a school is not necessarily in your district or is your community school. For D75, you should be directed with a prior written notice, and make sure that there's an appropriate placement. If you have any questions, you should reach out to D75 at this email, or ask for the borough placement officer with this number here. And make sure, we're going to talk a little bit more about IEPs going forward, but make sure that the school can provide your child's IEP program and services. You shouldn't be changing an IEP, or school shouldn't be asking you to change an IEP to accommodate your student. You should make sure that the school has the services so that they can accommodate the IEP. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about now. So what if the school doesn't have the program or services on the IEP? So technically, every school should have the services as written on the IEP, but unfortunately, this is not always the case. Fortunately, though, there are at least checks to find out if they do have the sources or if they do have the resources. So we're going to talk a little bit about that now. So an important step is asking the school if they can provide what's on the IEP. Researching what the school has. Like I said, all schools are supposed to provide programs and services, and IEP programs and services should be in place from the beginning of the year. And also on our website, I'm not sure if this one will be sent with a presentation, but we can see if we can. We have a tip sheet on school visits and IEP questions that are helpful to ask if you're just getting to know a new school or you want to make sure that they have services. But since this is a more general webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about how to find those resources online. So check NICSA, that's that acronym for okay. So check NICSA under IEP, and you should be able to see teachers, SATSS, and therapists that are available in the school. So this should be under the IEP section. I know Kim mentioned before that under the IEP section on NICSA, you won't be able to see the entire IEP, but this is one of the parts that you should be able to see where you can see the service and the provider at the school.
Yeah, and it's one thing that's, I think, a little unclear to us is how quickly they update the provider names. So it's something that if you don't see it now, that may not be a problem, but you should be seeing something by the beginning of school.
Yeah. Okay. So then a way to check if most students are getting what's on their IEPs, you can look specifically for school quality reports on the DOE website. So you would go to the DOE website, you would find the school you're looking for, look for school quality reports under supportive environments, and you should be able to see this page, which will show you a percentage based on, I think, the previous year's school data on what services students are receiving and how much they're receiving their services. And as you can see here, it's contrasted with the city average. And yeah, you can see a little bit of a breakdown by demographic. But this is a helpful resource in trying to figure out if your school can accommodate your student's IEP. How do I know if a school has small class or ICT? Again, you can look up the school on the DOE website, go to the school quality report, and click on the school quality guide. It's the second in the list. It shouldn't be the school snapshot, which is I think what comes up when you first look at schools on the DOE or the school quality report. Click the little plus sign next to students with disabilities, and you can see what types of services the school offers, and if they offer the services that are on your student's IEP. So then for more details on school class sizes, you can look at this link, which is hyperlinked in the presentation, and click on detailed school level data. And you should be able to download an Excel file that will show you the size of the class, the number of students, average class sizes. And this all you should be able to find this on the DOE website.
Yeah, and this is my favorite one. Although it is a monster to open, it's a very big Excel sheet. So I wouldn't recommend doing this one on your phone. For example, if you have access to a computer, it does open up a little bit. You can open it on a phone, but it's a big spreadsheet. But it also tends to be the most up to date. And you can get a real sense of, is this a really overcrowded school, or do they actually have only ICT, or do they only have ICT in 9th grade and not in 10th, 11th, and 12th, for example? Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, so
real quick, we have another OPT question. If you want to answer that now, or do you want to wait till the end?
Oh, sure, I can answer it. Yeah, so filing a complaint with OPT, how does it help? That's such a good question. At one point when I was losing my own mind as a parent, I talked to the person who gave me a complaint number, and he said, I don't want a complaint number. I want to talk to somebody who will resolve it. I have a list of complaint numbers. What exactly are they doing for me? So that is a really good question. And what I would say is, and I don't have a magic number here, and I pushed for it. But when you have a few of them, right? And also if your school is complaining for you, and I've found that it depends on your relationship with the school. Some schools have a transportation coordinator who's more than happy to make complaints. And really they should help, because the students who miss busing are missing real class time. So it impacts them. It's not just a hassle for the parents, it's an incredible deprivation of the right to be in school. But if the school is willing to do it, they can share the complaint numbers with you. when you get enough of them, then you can write up, if your child has an IEP, for example, go through special education at schools.nyc.gov, talk to the superintendent. And it just, when you have an email or a letter that lists out, here are the complaints and the dates and when I called, that should make an impact. And unfortunately, it takes several incidents, at the least to get somebody to act. But for example, if your child's on an oversubscribed route, not an uncommon problem, or their limited time travel is being really violated, having a list of complaints with complaint numbers and dates you called it in seems to be how you can get the levers of the bureaucracy to move to try to get a solution reached for your child. So I understand the question and the frustration with what do I do with a complaint number, but at least in our experience, that's how it works and how it's most likely to get a quick solution. Because of course you do have all kinds of rights. You have the right to file an impartial hearing, to file a state complaint, to file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights, but those complaints take a really long time. And, really as a parent, usually what you want is it to be fixed now. So I'm not saying don't file that, but also keep complaining and pushing centrally at the DOE to try to get a fix to help. Okay, so the one-to-one nursing, I think that's a really common question. And you should, well, I guess, is there a way for you to chat with us? You should reach out to Advocates for Children. We do have a nursing case, and we have talked with a lot of people centrally about this. It's an ongoing issue. So for any service you don't get, it's actually not a bad segue into this slide. For any service you don't get, if your child's not getting their occupational therapist because there's no OT at the school, or they don't have sets, or they had a small class placement. This time of year, we get a lot of calls from people who were supposed to be placed in a small class in a community school or in District 75. There are actually vouchers that you're entitled to under a case called Jose P. It's a class action. The RSAs are vouchers that you could use for a related service provider who's licensed in the state of New York. They do have to go through a whole background check with the DOE. And P3s or P4s, it's the same thing. It's a voucher for a teacher. For both of these, the rates often are less than what providers are asking for. If you do find a provider who's willing to take the voucher, and that means submitting paperwork to the DOE, but they will only do it for a higher rate, make sure you've made a bunch of calls to people on the DOE's list, but you should be able to get a higher rate by asking for it. If you can't find somebody and you say, look, I've called these, 10 people or these 5 people and none of them will take it. Do you have someone? And if not, I found this person that instead of the $90 an hour will do it for $130 an hour. Ask for the increased rate and it may be approved. And the same is true for sets. For P1, that's a little bit of a different voucher. It's a voucher for a private school. With all of these, it's something where it depends on the parent. It shouldn't, but it does depend on the parent finding a solution. So for a P1, if your child is recommended for a small class and you don't get it, you can try to find a non-public school. This state education department has a list of non-public schools that are approved. It has to be an approved non-public school, a state-approved non-public school, and they have to be able to provide roughly what's on your child's IEP. They have to match the classification. So if your child is classified as having a learning disability and you get a P1, you have to find a school, a state-approved school that's authorized to accept students with learning disabilities. If your child's in a 12-to-1 and they offer a 12-to-2 or slightly different ratio, that generally is okay. It's also just for 1 year, so they can offer you another public school next year. It does not mean that your child has an ongoing right to private school, although in practice we've often seen people be able to stay. Okay, so that's makeup services and vouchers. And for nursing, you can get an RSA for nursing. You definitely are going to want to ask for an increased rate, but it's pretty hard to find somebody. So definitely reach out. A nursing agency should not be telling you at this point they don't have anyone. Certainly you can reach out to the Office of School Health, to your child's school, and you should be complaining about it. But feel free to reach out to Advocates for Children too if you have and you haven't gotten a good answer. Uh, so for, if you're having trouble in general, let's say, you're complaining about the bus and it's not coming, or it's your child is getting to school an hour late every day. Start with the school. Certainly start with, well, transportation is probably a bad example, but let's say your child's not getting something that's more school centered, like they don't have sets, or their sets teacher is, a math teacher and your child needs help with reading. Definitely start with the school. Talk to the parent coordinator, talk with the principal. It makes sense. Sometimes people think they shouldn't do that because, well, they would have fixed it if they could have. And sometimes what a teacher is telling you and what a principal hears are two different things. So certainly it makes sense to start there. If that doesn't work, you can go up to the district superintendent's office, to a family support person, or to the district family advocate. You can go to the central offices as well. And that number is the main central office number, or email into specialeducation@schools.nyc.gov. There's some specialized emails as well. So for related services, you can email related services at schools.nyc.gov. There's a special email for transition to kindergarten. For charter schools, you can email the CSE chairperson. I'm a little bit worried this link might be wrong now because we heard there were some issues with CSE contacts, but we'll check that before we send it out. And then specialized programs at schools.nyc.gov. We'll go through that in a minute. But if you're continuing to have issues, please call our helpline at 1-866-427-6033, or write in at info@advocatesforchildren.org. If that doesn't work and you want to do formal dispute resolution, you have a right to file for mediation. Mediation is a voluntary meeting. It's led by a mediator. You still have a right to go to impartial hearing. When we've seen that work the best is when it's something that the school, where you have an ongoing relationship with the school, and you really want to try to fix something where things are heated, but if you can talk them through, they might be able to fix it. Sometimes it works for that. For other things, you really do need to file an impartial hearing, and that's a legal proceeding with an impartial hearing officer. There have been many, many delays with that. It's a system that has recently had a lot of changes, and we're hoping that it will speed up a bit. The decision you get from that is a written decision. You can appeal it. And it makes sense if you're suing for something the DOE just isn't going to agree to, like private school. Or sometimes, it can make sense for something where you really want a particular kind of therapy. It's a good question with busing. Does it make sense to file an impartial hearing? Maybe. It's tricky because with busing, it's really time is of the essence. Certainly it makes sense also if you're trying to file you haven't gotten paid. The reimbursement from the DOE can be very, very slow if you're paying yourself and hoping to get paid back. A state ed complaint is something you can do as well. And they can order the DOE to do makeup services. One thing to know is when you file a complaint with the state education department or the Office of Civil Rights, which we actually don't have on the slide, but it's in some other places. That's basically just the federal equivalent. They investigate, so that part's nice. You don't have to do the work yourself in proving a case. You just have to submit the stuff to them. But then they may decide, well, certainly you didn't get related services for a year. We're going to ask the DOE to decide what an appropriate compensatory service would be. And that's kind of frustrating because if you missed 50 sessions of OT, you might think, well, just give me 50 sessions of OT. And the DOE might say, well, we think, you could make that up with less than that. So sometimes you don't have as much control with a state ed complaint. On the other hand, you may not have as much work. And for something like an ongoing busing issue, it could make sense to file a state ed or an OCR complaint. Okay, next up is an IEP. What if your child needs different supports than what's on the IEP? So if you need to change an IEP, certainly to state the obvious, you want to get proof, right? You think your child needs specific help with executive functioning or with something very concrete that they're not providing. You want to gather all the records. If you have any private evaluations or even public evaluations that prove your point, as well as, your students' work or statements that were made, get everything together, ask for an IEP meeting in writing and say exactly what you want. Bring people to the meeting that support you, take notes, and ask for the program pages to be printed out at the meeting. And obviously follow up afterwards. If you think there was an agreement reached, you want to make sure you get a copy of the finalized agreement and go up the chain if you need to. One thing to keep in mind for specialized programs, for asking for changes for an IEP, sometimes what we're finding is that people are asking for something because their child doesn't quite fit the mold of the special ed programs at that school. And some of the most creative programs that the DOE has come up with have been based on groups of students that was true for. So this first example isn't exactly it. It's bilingual ICT or special class. The reason bilingual ICT or special class has its own admissions process at the DOE is because there's not enough of them, frankly. It's a real shortage area. They do not have enough bilingual special education teachers. They don't have enough bilingual teachers, period. And you add special education in and it's even worse. So if your child needs a bilingual special class or ICT, and they don't have it at your child's school, make sure you're asking for it. There is a centralized office that can help. And you do have a right to busing there. So certainly, for many students, that really helps them if that's what they need. Other specialized programs for students on the autism spectrum, these were relatively new. About a decade ago, they started the ASD Nest program. And it's very popular and it's grown and grown and grown. And it's because these are students on the spectrum who are doing grade level work, but who do need teachers that are really trained in working with students with autism. And although all special ed teachers or even gen ed teachers are supposed to have some training, it really helps to have somebody who has a real focus in it. I apologize for the sirens outside. I am in Midtown today. So the ASD Horizon program is similar, but for students who are working on a slightly lower level, and it's self-contained, meaning it's all students with autism with the same class, but in a community school. ACES is a program for students with intellectual disabilities. Students who need barrier-free, this is more like bilingual. It's just because it's about the lack of available resources. AFC just recently put out a report on how few schools are fully accessible. And it's a real problem for students who use wheelchairs, for parents who use wheelchairs. They can't get in to their children's schools, but because there's such a shortage of that, there is an office that can help. Literacy is another initiative that the DOE has recently started and expanding, which is basically like specialized supports for students who need help with literacy, who have dyslexia, for example. And it's really a pretty small number of schools right now, but it should grow. And that's something to look into if your child is struggling in your school in your neighborhood. You should know that there may be a specialized program that you could ask for. And this link here goes to the DOE's site on specialized programs. Finally, if you feel like the DOE just really can't serve your child's needs, you can ask for a private school. And that's there's a few different types, but the kind you can get in an IEP is a state-approved non-public school, also called an NPS. And to get that, you have to show that a student's needs can't be met in a public school program. The schools specialize in meeting a particular need. The IEP says defer to CBST or NYSED approved non-public school program. There's a CBST, a central-based support team that applies to NPSs. But one thing you should know is that we've often seen parents have a better luck applying themselves even before they have the IEP change. Some private schools won't talk to you, but some will if you're explaining, look, I haven't gotten the IEP yet, but these are my child's evaluations. I think that they need a school like yours. And here's the link to the list of schools that you can see. Okay, it looks like we had some questions.
Yep, we have one outstanding one right now.
Okay. So yes, it is really hard to find providers. In fact, I would be surprised if anyone could find somebody because the P4 rate is so low. What you need to do is if you found a provider at an enhanced rate, just keep going up the chain and be very specific. And, can you find me a P4 or a SETS teacher? And here's what I've found. And go up to the principal, then go to the superintendent, go to special education at schools.nyc.gov. SETS is kind of in between a program and a related service. So you can also email related service and ask for an enhanced rate. Unfortunately, we've seen people end up filing hearings for that. Often being successful, it's just a delay. So certainly I would encourage you to try that. If you have not found anyone yet, that's tougher. What I would say is the DOE has updated their list, so there's a lot more names and people to call. We have not yet found them to be updated in terms of quality, unfortunately, so we haven't had people having great success. Other ideas that I've learned from other parents are reaching out. Are there any private schools in your area? If you live in one area and send your child to a different district, maybe a SETS teacher in a school close to you would be willing to work with your child after school. There are some conflict rules with providers, so they can't work with someone in their school. And for some types of providers, they can't work with someone in their district. But certainly, there may be some creative ways to find someone in the system to work with your child. Okay. Oh.
All right. So once again, we're going to switch gears a little bit here, and I'm going to talk about language access. So this is really important, but parents have the right to get documents translated, including report cards and IEPs. So this is something that we really advocate for parents, that they're getting any documentation related to their children's school in their own language. We've had plenty of cases where we've had families who have had students with IEPs and have had IEP meetings, but the documents just haven't been translated. And this is something that's really important for parents so that they can understand the services that their children are receiving, and then the services that they're entitled to, so they can better advocate for their students. Parents also have the right to interpretation services at school meetings and events. So the DOE is supposed to provide a translator. The parent should not be required to bring their own translator. The DOE also has a language line, which helps if there's no translator available. It's really important that the DOE provides a translator, and translators are supposed to be neutral and not really party to either the DOE or the parents. For example, if you're working with an advocate and you've been working with the advocate and they speak your primary language, it's still within your best interest to request a translator from the DOE, just because you want the advocate to do their job and advocate for you. Whereas the translator is there to relay the information between both parties. So the DOE has translation in Spanish, French, Arabic, Chinese, Bengali, Urdu, Russian, Korean, and Haitian Creole. So multilingual learners with IEPs. Unfortunately, bilingual special education classes are very limited, and students who could benefit from these services often are not able to be placed in bilingual special education classes. They may get an alternate placement para or SETS, but basically what this means is an alternate para is someone who would essentially translate for a student within the classroom setting. So again, this is not ideal, but this is a service that the DOE offers. For older English language learners, there are transfer schools for English language learners. Most of them, unfortunately, are in Manhattan. There's one in the Bronx, Ellis School. And these are transfer schools that have accommodations and services for English language learners. I know that in Brooklyn and Queens, they're working with some of the existing transfer schools there to build capacity so that they can provide services to English language learners. But the main transfer schools that offer these services are primarily in Manhattan, except for the one in the Bronx. Older English language learners can also attend international high schools. So these are typically schools for students with less than 2 to 4 years in the United States or in New York. And these are schools that English language learners can opt to attend. One thing we've heard pretty often, unfortunately, at family welcome centers is when students will come in, sometimes the DOE or New York City Public Schools will offer them to do like an alternate graduation requirement or some sort of alternate program. But students have the right to attend high school if that's what they want to do. And in that case, we urge students and their families to advocate that they attend an international high school if that's what they want to do and they don't want to do a high school equivalency program. Again, if there are credits from like a home country, sometimes these can be a little bit hard to transfer within the DOE. If you are having any issues with credit transfers, we recommend that you reach out to us through our helpline or through our webmail, just because we have experience advocating for this in the past. And if there are any other questions related to multilingual learners, definitely email the BSE programs at schools.nyc.gov email for help, which is linked here. All right, so as we're starting to wrap up, we're going to shift gears one more time. So unfortunately, since students have been back in school following the pandemic, we have seen a little bit of an increase in suspensions. Typically, we see a lot of suspensions in October and in May. And we see that 8th graders are the students who are most frequently getting suspended. We do have a suspension webinar up on our website. So if you want more information on what's included here, I would suggest that you guys check that out. But some important details to know about suspension. The notice must be in writing, no out of school suspensions. So this means that the student is required to continue learning, even if they're suspended, whether that's at an alternate learning center or a different site within their home school. For principal suspension, parents are entitled to ask for a conference with the principal. For superintendent suspension, parents are supposed to get the packet before the suspension hearing. So a suspension packet will include details related to the incident, any academic records, any disciplinary records, anything like that. And the schools sometimes don't provide this to the parent, or they'll provide it the date of the suspension hearing. But we always urge parents to ask for this as soon as their student gets suspended or as soon as they get the suspension notification. Just for clarity, this is different than the notification parents get that says that your student is being suspended and where their alternate learning center is. And if you have any questions about suspensions, call AFC for help. We do a lot of suspension representation, and we can also provide some technical assistance or let you know if the school's doing what they should be doing or not doing what they should be doing. All right. Do you want to take over here, Kim, so I can
sure. Yeah. So We have a survey here. You can actually, when you close out, hopefully it'll pop up on your screen, but you could also do a QR code. It really helps us with our funders for people to take the survey. If you put your email in, we can make sure we have it correctly to email you the slides. And then also we have some questions on, was this helpful? Are there other questions that you'd like answered? Other trainings you'd like to see? So please let us know. Actually, Ross, do you want to launch the last poll while we're here as well? And we can also answer any questions of yours. I know we've said this throughout, but there's also our helpline, and our email is here as well. Oh, somebody asked about how will the bus strike affect those students with alternate drop-offs, like after school programs? That is such a good question, because my first thought is, well, they shouldn't. Either you're going to have a bus or you're not. But if you're saying how will it affect it in terms of if your child went to an after school, you might need maybe 6 reimbursements, right? Because to get your child to school, to get to work, to get back from your job to your child's school, to get your child to the after school, and then to get home from there, maybe it's 5, because most after schools aren't long enough that it would make sense for you to take transportation back to work. I don't have the answer to that. Certainly I would ask about it, and see if the DOE will work with you with that. In terms of will it affect the buses doing a drop off? It shouldn't, except the only thing I would say about a bus strike is that when that happened the last time, it was chaotic even for the people who were not on the buses where it was impacted, because I think they just tried to, put as many students as possible in other buses, and it just made things more chaotic at schools in general. So I guess that's as detailed as I can be at this time. If people have other questions, please let us know. We can happy to answer them now. If that helps, you can unmute yourself if you wanted to speak. And otherwise, thank you so much for coming. Please take our survey, and good luck in the beginning of school. I hope that the bus strike wraps up and the bus companies offer something fair and reasonable to all the people who are striking right now, and that it gets resolved. Busing in New York is really stressful, even when there isn't a strike. So this is a tough situation for everyone.
Yeah, and we will also make sure that you're checking our website, because we will have updates as soon as we hear them. And also, if you have any other specific questions, please reach out to our helpline or our webmail email that's at the bottom here. I guess we can stop recording now in case people want to send in any other questions they might have. So we'll stop recording and we'll hang on for a little bit longer.